Welcome back. We continue our coverage of corruption here on Morning Live. It's a special coverage that we're doing this morning here at the SABC. Let's now move to the coronavirus pandemic. It really has exposed poor oversight in monitoring corruption on the part of the Eastern Cape government. 10 companies on the published list of over 300 companies doing business with the government in the province are linked to officials who ended up getting PPE tenders. This caused an uproar from various fronts. The provincial Treasury promised to act on those found in the wrong, but nothing has happened in the past 2 weeks since the promise was made. This report from Yanga Funani and camera person Ako Vena. Have a look.
Questions of impropriety continue to be asked since the release of the list of companies who clinched PPE and hospital refurbishment tenders. The bone of contention is in the ownership of those companies, their proximity to political heads of the province, and the criteria used to award those tenders. Nearly 6 million rand has been spent in the aforementioned areas during the past 4 months. The Special Investigation Unit is also looking into 350 transactions related to the coronavirus spending in the province.
We are going all out to ensure that everything that we do is transparent, everyone is held accountable, and people must have answers where they are implicated. So we are working very hard on that issue in particular because corruption is an antithesis of progress and development. And if we allow it to rein in, if we allow it to continue unabating, surely we are not going to move forward and be the country that would want to be.
The government watchdog, the Public Service Accountability Monitor, says action must be taken.
It requires coordination between law enforcement authorities, and it also requires heads of departments and director generals and municipal managers to comply with the law and take disciplinary action and refer, where warranted, criminal cases to the police to prosecute those who have contravened the law and which has resulted in COVID responses to this being affected in ways that result in the violation of people's rights.
The Provincial Treasury says it's moving with the necessary speed.
Any person who is employed by the state, that person, if he is found to have done business with the state, that is a transgression, a serious transgression, a transgression that can result into a fine and imprisonment. But obviously there is a process of ensuring that whoever has done business with the state, that person would need to go through a process, and if that person is found guilty, then the person must face the consequences.
But the damage already wrought is of concern.
Most of the damage caused is irremediable. Imagine tens of thousands of lives that are negatively affected because of corruption. It is time to act now because many lives are suffering.
The Office of the Premier has extended an invitation for people to report wrongdoing. Yanga Funani, SABC News in Bisho.
All right, again, thanks to SABC reporter Yanga Funani and camera person Ako Vena, who filed that report for us. So for more on the story, we are joined via Zoom by the Eastern Cape Treasury's Head of Department, Daluhlanga Majeke. Good to have you. Thanks very much for being with us.
Good morning, Liam. Good morning to the viewers. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Earlier media reports suggest that 10 government employees unduly benefited from being awarded contracts to do business with the state. How did this come about, and how far are you in your investigations?
Yeah, thank you, Liam. This was part of overall sixth administration way of trying to deal with the perception of corruption, which is so we decided as a province, before actually even the announcement by the Minister of Finance, that we are going to be transparent, especially during this COVID-related period, and make sure that we publish this particular list. And the stance which we've taken is not a new stance in terms of assessing those who are conflicted. It's something which we've been doing now, especially since last year, that we keep on every quarter in order to assess those who are kind of affected and conflicted within the process. So this was a continuation of the process. It's just that now we intensify the program as part of ensure them that we publish then the particular list, which we're going to do now continuously for every quarter. We're going to publish all those the tenders which have been awarded, some of the processes which we followed, and also relate in terms of now those who are kind of conflicted.
Yeah. I just have to just correct you on one word where you're saying that it's a perception of corruption, or it's perceived to be. I'm not sure there are any perceptions here. I mean, the reality is, and we read this, more than 560 government employees in the Eastern Cape have been identified as doing business with the province. That's not perceived. That is corruption.
Let me relate. It's important sometimes to understand potential and real, and it's very critical, because in actual fact, that was reflecting to potential. The real conflicted is actually 8 on that, which formulate about 46.5 million. So I want to say that, and on that, it's something which we've related also as part of the investigation. First, it was an audit, and then now it's going under investigations. Those 8 officials which are affected, including of the relevant department. So I'm standing to what I'm saying, that at times, there are things which are, you see it is perception, and there are things which are in terms of now, which are actually real. And that's why we partnered with the specialized investigating unit when we see that these things are real, and then we transfer some of these cases for further investigation to the law enforcement.
Let's delve a little bit deeper into that, because the provincial Treasury, as you mentioned, has published a list of the companies that were awarded tenders, but it's been widely criticised for its inaccuracy. And I mean, let's just take one specific incident, with some reports suggesting that a company belonging to a man that has been dead for 2 years. Yeah, he's been dead for 2 years. He won a 1 million rand PPE tender. Can you clarify that for us?
Let me clarify that. Again, it's an input. It's a pure error, that one, which happened. The person didn't get the tender. That's first part into it. That company didn't get. It's a matter of, in terms of now, when the 2S, the S, which is actually the spacing in between into it, and also the other one is a trading, and other one is a construction. So it's not in terms of now the same kind of company. But when we're inputting, because we're working on big numbers, if you really see that it was about 604 service providers so far, which we were working through in order to verify. So when the officials were taking those particular, the first 3 digits, it happened then that when they're punching in, so the 2S1 in terms of came through as the first one instead of the latter. So they didn't go and then verify those. So I want to say emphatically that the way Eastern Cape has not awarded any tender to any person who's actually deceased. In actual fact, we're apologizing to the family for that. But I have to say that the tender was awarded to the rightful construction company, which was employed by Department of Public Works.
All right, so you deny that ever happened, so this was not given to him. But there are other people that have said their names have been on the list, that they are beneficiaries, and yet they say that they have not even done work with you and they haven't received a cent. So what's going on? I mean, this list is clearly not accurate.
Let me say that the issue of the awards, which are actually there, is information which is reflected in terms of now. I can say that mostly that information which is there is accurate. There are a couple of errors, yes, which will happen as a human element in terms of the errors. But I can tell you that 95%, 96 to 97% is actually reflected the accuracy, which is actually there. There's sometimes typo there and there into it. But then there are certain element where then what we get from the relevant department, which based on the awards, which is actually there. When we get that, we of course verify some of the things, but now it's up to the departments in order to issue awards into the relevant institution. So as provincial government, as part of transparency, we will then publish, but of course it's up to the relevant institution, which we need to now come to the party in terms of now those particular awards which are there, and clarify what really happened in terms of why they have not received. And we are quite following it up because we formulated also a task team dealing particularly with those particular level and those call it the gaps which are embedded within the system. But it doesn't mean then in terms of now that the information which is actually there is almost inaccurate because the information which we got it from relevant institutions, verified within that particular. Then we need to follow what really happened after that kind of process of reporting back to provincial treasury, because we said that they must report on this on a weekly basis, and we are keeping that to that time.
Yeah, I'm just reading so many different stories and so many different people coming forward, and these are companies saying that their names are there, they haven't been paid. Here's another one: a quotation does not agree, is not a guarantee of award, and this was he said in relation to a company that was awarded an order for 1.13 million to supply 10,000 isolation gowns. I mean, this is just one thing as part of a deviation prior to the conclusion of the bidding process. But let's not go into specifics, but there are so many examples of what's gone wrong here. And a lot of the time, government is accused of paying lip service to corruption. And again, it feels like this is exactly what's going on here. There seems to be an answer for everything, but at the end of the day, there is rampant corruption happening if we take what at face value we are seeing in terms of documents and facts. Are we likely to see any real action being taken against those public servants found to have been doing business with the state? Can we get your word on this?
Yeah, we've been emphatic as a provincial government, I think recently, into that. We've been emphatic that now any wrongdoing is going to be looked at in terms, and we are going to make sure that all these things are investigated to the fullest. That's why we've partnered with law enforcement agencies in order to deal with this. We've actually transferred all the information when necessary. While we're doing our own audit and all our own investigation when necessary, the information get transferred to the law enforcement in order to make sure that they also continue to enforce it. So, and I think it's one thing to make sure that we create an element of accountability, and also in order to deal with the particular pandemic, which is kind of reflected to, so that we more or less have a clean government. And I think that's the element. That is why we went on transparency in order to publish, in order to scrutinize to the public. We all know that everyone else will have everything else to say, especially with Eastern Cape. But our role is to make sure we're steadfast in the direction which we want to. We don't get pulled down. We move forward in order to make sure that we clean it down. And of course, we're going to get hackles within the process into those the doubting Thomases within the process. But I think ultimately there will be lighting at the end of the tunnel. And I think we're on that one emphatic.
Yeah. Just finally, before I let you go, and as I conclude the interview, 1.2 billion rand is what has been fingered basically in terms of the amount of corruption that has taken place in the Eastern Cape. When we look at the hospitals and the state of your health care and your hospitals within the Eastern Cape, one would only imagine what 1.2 billion rand can actually do to assist in the fight against COVID-19 and to just fix up some of these derelict places that unfortunately people have to use because they have no option. This is a sin and a crime against humanity if one has to look at it that way in terms of the corruption that is taking place.
Leanne, I think sometimes we need to put our ducks in the row in certain things. 1.2 billion was mainly for PPE, and it was to save lives into it. You'll know at one stage Eastern Cape was kind of moving in a high trajectory in terms of the numbers, and we had to do a strategy in order to deal with it. And I think we've saved more lives in terms of now through the intervention we should have done. So I think I'm not going to be apologetic for the use of the money to save the lives. And secondly, I need to say then that, about the maintenance of facility, about 532 million, furthermore on that 1 point, was used to maintain facilities which are related to hospitals as part of this process. So, and those are the ones, for example, the company which are related to the 2SG, in terms of which was related to the construction, which was awarded in order to maintain some of the facilities. And I think you've seen it and flighted some of these things as SABC, where Premier has gone through the visits of facilities, which were some of them, in dilapidated state, including Silengama, which happened to be my constituency. So I'm just saying that these are the interventions which have happened, and it's something which you can see on the ground, present the facility. So that is the process which is there, but that will not change overnight because of this period, but it's something which we have to do even post-COVID. And I think we are emphatic now to say that from an infrastructure point of view, we've learned a lot during this period, and I think we can do more as we continue to enhance our service delivery.
All right, we wait to hear more from you. That was Daluhlanga Majeke, who is the head of department at the Eastern Cape Treasury, giving us an update on investigations into PPE tender irregularities in that province. And this is all part, of course, of the SABC News' special focus on COVID-19 related corruption today. All right, we're 5 minutes late for headlines, but let's just find out what is topping our bulletins. Sakina, let me hand this over to you.